Hi everybody. Recently, I did a podcast with the Sharks of Shark Tank India. In that episode, Vinita and Ritesh mentioned something very important on how they spot an extraordinary business and an extraordinary entrepreneur. Vinita said that to build a sustainable business, you need to find a huge target addressable market. And Ritesh said that the rarest breed of entrepreneurs are the ones who don't just have a smart brain, but also have a big heart to solve a critical problem.
I think great brain is available in less quantity, but is available. But great brain with big heart as a combination is unique.
And this is what turned people like Jack Ma into one of the most legendary entrepreneurs in the world. And while I was pondering over this idea, we saw the massive fall of edtech companies all across the world.
After enjoying 2 years of hypergrowth when everything went online, the Indian edtech startups had to learn some tough lessons in 2022.
Edtech firm Byju's is battling massive financial woes. Losses ballooned 1.8x from 4,564 crore rupees in FY21 to 8,245 crore rupees in FY22.
With Leader Learning, Treasure Fund, Uday, Super Learn shutting shop. EdTechs account for close to 50% of the 18,000 plus layoffs at the Indian startups this year. That's about 9,000 jobs cut.
And if you remember, when digging deeper into why edtech companies in India are failing, we found that the slow poison for these edtech companies is nothing but their customer acquisition cost. So if you sell a product for 3,000 rupees and you have to spend 2,000 rupees, as in 66% of the cost only into marketing, it is very difficult to make a profit. And this is exactly what happened to these giant edtech companies, where they spent so much money on marketing that to sell a single course worth 10,000 rupees, they spent 20, 30 or sometimes even 50,000 rupees into just customer acquisition. And this is what led to thousands of crores in losses and eventually the failure of some of the biggest edtech companies in the country. And this is when I realized that the key to cracking the edtech market is not customer acquisition, but customer retention. And while I was doing this research for thinkschool, I found something absolutely stunning. My best friend Mayur is by far the most insincere guy I have ever met other than myself. He and I never completed assignments on time, we were always late to college, and we barely passed our engineering exams. But surprisingly, last week I discovered that Mayur is learning a new language using an app, and he has been doing the exercises for 180 consecutive days without missing a single day. And this is not because Mayur is a changed person, but because the app that he was using was by design making him complete the exercises. And when I checked the stats, I found a goldmine of product design which every edtech company must use to scale their business. This app that I'm talking about is called Duolingo.
Duolingo, the largest online language learning platform in the world.
I just wanted to do a project that was related to my passion, which has always been education.
Offering 100 courses across more than 40 languages.
Large numbers of users actually learning something on Duolingo, that's very motivating.
With more than 74 million monthly active users this year.
Duolingo had about 10 million active users and was the #1 education app in the world.
I would say our biggest achievement since we got on the Forbes list and also since we hit a $1 billion valuation.
And if you've ever learned a foreign language, there is a high chance that you've used it, or perhaps you've used it for foreign language testing, or at least you've seen its popular green owl mascot Duo, right? Duolingo was started in 2011 by a computer science professor and a student with a mission to make education free and accessible to people worldwide. And today, with over 800 million downloads and 2 million test takers all across the world, it is safe to say that it is a company that has changed the face of language learning and testing forever. And they made this possible by hacking its learning design to such an extent that while the top language learning apps in the world had a total app download of 26.7 million in January 2024, Duolingo alone stood at 16.3 million downloads in January alone. So Duolingo alone has more downloads than its next 10 competitors combined. And if you look at its retention rate, it is absolutely stunning. Duolingo's retention rate is so high that it's more than the best performing games in the world like Candy Crush and Royal Match. And now they're using this model to solve even bigger education problems, from English proficiency testing to teaching math and even music. So if you want to design legendary products and crack the code to customer retention, please take notes from this episode. So if this is very clear to you, let's dive into this case study and understand how on earth did the designers of Duolingo crack the code to learners' engagement, how are they using this model to solve other challenges in the language learning ecosystem today, and most importantly, what are the lessons that we need to learn from the incredible product design of Duolingo. This is a story that dates back to 1997 when a young boy named Louis Von Ahn went to the United States for higher education. And while studying in America, he spotted a brilliant business opportunity in the foreign language learning market. He observed that learning a language is far less complicated than learning physics or computer science. Secondly, he observed that foreign languages have a huge target addressable market of more than 1 billion people, and most of them want to learn English. But out of these, only a small fraction could afford the $500 traditional teaching offered by the existing companies. And third and most importantly, he learned that learning a foreign language is one of the easiest ways to get a salary hike at a job. For example, if you work as a waiter and you learn English, you can immediately be promoted in a hotel and get a 30% hike in your salary. So in 2012, Louis and his student Severin created a product named Duolingo to teach foreign languages for free. Now you see, a lot of edtech companies come out with courses and educational tools, but they have one big problem which can be represented with this diagram. This challenge is that if the course has to provide value, it has to be difficult. But if the course is difficult, then it causes frustration to the students because they're not able to complete the exercises. And then the students procrastinate or leave the course altogether. At the same time, if it's too easy, then the course will become too boring and then it will be called as a basic course. So the key to cracking the edtech market is to design a product with a golden recipe to push the intellect of the learners. At the same time, it must be motivating enough to prevent learners from procrastinating. So it has to strike the perfect balance between the challenge in the course and the skill level of the students. On top of that, if you've taken a free course, then you would know that more than 50% of the people who sign up for a free course never actually complete it. But if you look at Duolingo, their share of retained users in October 2023 was 68%, which is higher than Brainly and Babbel. In fact, Duolingo has such a high retention rate that its retention rate is more than Royal Match, which stands at 66%, and Candy Crush, which stands at 64%. So the question is, with a free product, how did Duolingo achieve such an extraordinary engagement? Well, the answer to this lies in this model called the Hooked model, written by Niriyal in his book Hooked. This model says that to get a customer engaged with you, you must build a habit-forming product. And here's how Duolingo's design is strategically made to keep you hooked. This model consists of a 4-step framework: a trigger, action, variable reward, and investment. Let's start with the trigger. Trigger is basically a nudge to action. So if you see an ad, the nudge over here is this click here button and the buy now button. In case of WhatsApp or Instagram, an external trigger comes in the form of push down notifications or a beep. All these triggers push you to open the app, right? Well, just like that, Duolingo uses 3 unique strategies. Firstly, their push notifications come from different personas. For example, the app's mascot Duo has a playful and encouraging tone, whereas Lily is more like a sassy teenager. Secondly, using AI and data analysis, they found that the best time to send these notifications is exactly 24 hours after the user's last session. So if you were free at 9 PM yesterday, there is a very high probability that you will be free at 9 PM today. And that is when Duolingo will send you a notification. And if you use FinShots app, you will see that even FinShots uses the same technique where they send you or they ask you to send their notifications at the exact same time. Thirdly, Duolingo will stop sending you notifications after 7 days of inactivity. And you know what? Before they stop sending you the notifications, they will send you a passive-aggressive notification like this. Now, I don't know if you sense this, but this notification is almost like our mothers taunting us for not doing our work. And guess what? Using these personified guilt-tripping notifications, Duolingo was able to attract a large number of people to come back to the app and start doing their exercises. And cherry on the cake, because of these funny mom-like notifications, the green owl mascot of Duolingo started becoming a meme sensation on the internet. And soon enough, their marketing team embraced this meme culture and started using it for their ads.
The Duolingo bird. When you haven't practiced in 2 days, beg for your life in Spanish.
Duolingo, I missed a Spanish lesson today. Please don't kill me. Y'all really be testing my patience.
This is how Duolingo successfully used the first part of the hooked model, the trigger, to regularly bring people to the app. If this is very clear to you, let's move to the second part of the hook model, which is action. This is nothing but the smallest action that a customer does in anticipation of a reward. In case of Instagram, the act of opening the app, going to the DMs or replying to the DMs is the action. In Duolingo's case, the action is the act of opening the app and completing a 3-minute lesson on language learning. Then we come to the third stage, which is the reward. And this is where the magic of addictive learning comes in. And the secret to this comes from a 1948 experiment. You know, in 1948, a psychologist named Dr. B.F. Skinner conducted an experiment where he placed 2 rats in 2 different boxes equipped with a lever and a food dispenser. In the first iteration, when the rats pressed the lever, the food would be dispensed immediately. So this was a regular reward pattern where once the lever was pressed, the food was given. But in the second experiment, instead of giving the food every time the rat pressed the lever, he gave them food in an unpredictable pattern. For example, sometimes the rat would be given a reward after pressing the lever 2 times, sometimes after 3 times, sometimes after 10 times. Similarly, the quantity of treats was also very variable, where sometimes he would get a small treat, sometimes he would get a large treat. And unlike the mice that received the same treat every time, the mice that received variable rewards got addicted to pressing the lever again and again and again. And when the same experiment was tried with pigeons, the result was even crazier. While one pigeon tapped the button 2.5 times per second for 16 continuous hours, another pigeon tapped the button 87,000 times over the course of 14 hours. This is how addictive the variable reward pattern is. And this is when B.F. Skinner realized that if a subject is given rewards in an unpredictable pattern, then the subject will do the action way more frequently in anticipation of the unpredictable reward. And a classic example of the same was Google Pay's scratch card. Sometimes when you scratched it, you would get 10 rupees. Sometimes people would get 100 rupees as cashback. But soon enough, if you remember, Google Pay stopped giving you rewards as frequently as it did. But even then, we would still scratch it with a tiny hope that we might get some reward. This is the power of variable reward. And if you look at Duolingo, this is how they applied it. When you complete a lesson, you don't get a badge or a streak. You get experience points. For example, you get 10 XP. And then this gets built up and finally contributes to a day streak. And if you accomplish a certain number of tasks or stay consistent for a certain number of days, then you even get a badge. This is your reward for completing the exercises. And just like a casino, they also have a sound effect that activates the reward centers in our brain to keep us engaged in the app. This is the third stage of the hook model, which is variable reward. And then comes the final stage, which is investment. Now, if you know the IK effect, you would know that when we voluntarily invest efforts, time or money into a product, that product automatically becomes more valuable to us. For example, in spite of not using Facebook for years, you still haven't deleted your Facebook account, right? Why? Because you've invested a lot of your time to build a network of 5,000 friends. So even though you'll never talk to these 5,000 friends, the effort that you invested in that account prevents you from deleting the account. So in spite of it being very less useful, because of your investment, you still have your Facebook account. And just like that, if you look at Duolingo, they've introduced a combination of multiple features that make a user psychologically invest into the app. The first feature is a streak. And if you've used Snapchat, you would know what a streak is. In case of Duolingo, for every day that you use Duolingo app, the app rewards you with a streak. And just like Snapchat, even if you miss a single day, your streak will come down to 0. Now, the beauty of psychology is that even if you have a streak of 1,000 days, there aren't any tangible rewards like a car or a bike or cash. It's just that because you've put in your efforts and time into maintaining the streak by itself becomes more and more valuable with time. And if you look at the result of this simple gamification feature, it will blow your mind. As of 2023, Duolingo clocked 3 million daily active users that had a streak for more than 365 days. So do you realize what this means? 3 million people are regularly using Duolingo every single day. Similarly, they have a feature called the League. So just like in games while doing the exercises, each Duolingo user gains experience points, and as they gain more and more experience, they compete on a leaderboard called a league. This board consists of 30 random participants who use the app around the same time. So again, the more experience you earn, the higher your rank goes. So each Sunday, a weekly league begins. And by the end of that week, if you stand amongst the top 10 people, you advance to the next league. And in total, there are 10 such leagues from bronze to silver to gold to pearl to obsidian to diamond. So the better you do, the higher up you go. And if you reach the final Diamond League, you are eligible for an entry into the Diamond League tournament, which again has quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals. And you know what's even more surprising? Just like there are rewards for good deeds, there are even mini punishments for bad deeds. For example, if you rank among the bottom 5 people on your 30% leaderboard, you are demoted to a lower rank. And if you continue having low engagement, you are brought all the way back to the lowest rank, from where you can again climb your way up. So do you realize after spending hours into something, it is very difficult for someone to not try and upgrade? This is how, ladies and gentlemen, Duolingo has perfected the use of positive and negative feedback such that learners are motivated to push themselves and not be lazy. And here's where the hook of the hook model gets complete, where Duolingo starts with a trigger, which is their push notification and reminder, makes the learners take an action. This action is taken in anticipation of a reward, which is their experience points, streak and leaderboard. And eventually, it leads to a psychological investment, which further leads to a trigger for learning, which then brings back users to the app again. This is how Duolingo has worked on every aspect of the hook model to turn language learning into a habit-forming exercise. And today, Duolingo has grown to offer courses on over 40 languages, ranging from English, Spanish, Hindi to even Telugu and Latin. In fact, in 2016, the team of Duolingo expanded their business model to solve another pressing problem. And this is a very, very big gap that even you can capitalize on. And here's where, like Ritesh Agarwal mentioned, the big hard factor comes into play. You see, in India, Asia, Africa, and South America, there are millions of students who go abroad to study or to find better employment opportunities. From India alone, more than 1.3 million students went abroad for studies in 2022. And over 50% of the Indian applicants still prefer English-speaking countries as their first choice to study abroad. So they primarily go to US, UK, Canada or Australia, right? Now in India and all these countries that I just mentioned, an English proficiency test is often mandatory for international students to get admission into university programs. And two of the most common widely accepted tests are TOEFL and IELTS. Now, if you look at these tests, they have 3 visible problems. The first problem is the cost problem. And if you look at TOEFL and IELTS, it will cost you anywhere between 16 to 17,000 rupees to apply for these tests. And this is a fairly high sum for an average Indian. But this is not the only cost that you incur. You can send the scores for free to only 5 colleges, and after that, for each additional university, it will cost you another 250 rupees. This increases the total cost to apply by a large extent. Secondly, the test centers are in limited cities across the country. So for students who live in smaller towns, they need to take a trip to the nearest destination for just this one exam. And this situation is even more bad in Africa and Central and South America. In fact, the founder Louis himself faced a problem with in-person tests when he was planning to go to the US to study from his home country of Guatemala. Even he had to give his TOEFL, but for this single exam, he was forced to travel to another country just to take this exam. And if you look at the situation in India, you will see that there are only 78 test centers for IELTS, whereas the number of IELTS takers is estimated to be around 1.3 to 1.4 million every year. This means there are 17,948 students per test center. So obviously, students don't get an appointment on the date that they want. They have to wait for long periods of time before their exam date, and students living in smaller towns have to travel to another location just to take this test. And lastly, these centers are vulnerable in case of a conflict, natural disaster or public health crisis. And this is what we saw in India during COVID. So you know what? Duolingo has come up with a solution for this, and they are calling it the DET or Duolingo English Test. This test is just an online exam that has the same 4 sections as an international English exam. So they have sections for speaking, listening, reading and writing. And they use computer adaptive technology, which means that the difficulty of the question adapts to each test taker and scores you accordingly. And since the test is adaptive, it takes less than an hour to complete this test. Whereas in other exams, you need to sit for multiple hours to complete it. And this test also integrates a video interview. So this interview is sent to the institution along with their proficiency score and writing sample. So this is how Duolingo is now entering a new market to disrupt the English test market with their superior smart product. And if you look at this model offers you multiple advantages over the traditional exams. Firstly, the test is 1/3 the cost at 5,000 rupees for Indians. Secondly, it can be taken using a laptop and internet connection. So now, instead of pre-booking and traveling to the test centers, students can access it on demand from their house itself. And instead of waiting for a week, the results also arrive faster within just 2 days of taking the test. And thirdly, it can be sent to unlimited schools at no added fees, unlike IELTS, which sends it for free only to 5 schools and then charges you a premium for the rest. And today, the number of programs accepting DET has gone up to 5,000 plus programs, and it is most widely accepted in the US and Canada. This is why Indians from 1,200 cities and towns in 2022 took this test to apply abroad. So this is how Duolingo solved the major pain point of foreign language learning across the world, and now they're doubling down using their tech and distribution to solve one more critical problem of English tests all across the world. And this brings us to the last part of the episode, and that are the business lessons that we need to learn from the iconic rise of Duolingo. Lesson number 1. While most edtech companies obsess over customer acquisition, great edtech companies obsess over customer retention. Lesson number 2. If you want to sustain in this crowded market of apps and products, you have to find a way to become a habit-forming product. And for this, I would highly recommend you to read this book called Hooked by Neerjal. And lastly, you need to understand that there is a huge target addressable market in India, Africa, and South America, which still needs life-changing solutions. And each of these problems are a stepping stone to help us find a $1 million business opportunity. This is the story, business strategy, and the lessons that we need to learn from the rise of Duolingo. And I just hope you found something valuable from this case study. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.